My name is Michaela Eschbach. I'm the Managing Director of Founders for Schools, and I will be hosting the session today. We hope to support students to make informed decisions about their future by offering careers lessons, guidance, and tips. We want to open the dialogue today about alternative career routes to help you navigate the pathway available to you, supporting you all to take the right decision when taking your first step into the world of work, getting to where you want to be. Apprenticeships might be a suitable pathway for many, so we will explore this further today. So we would like you to keep your audio and video off. We have activated the chat function, and we would encourage you, and I would really like to encourage you, ask as many questions as you want throughout our session today, so we can get back and answer as many questions as possible towards the end of the session. We have the video and the chat function disabled because of safeguarding purposes, but please use our chat function. We are recording this session and it will be featured on our F4S platform and on YouTube channels. So sit back and enjoy the webinar and make the most of it. Just before I introduce you to our speakers today, I would like to ask you 2 questions at the beginning of our session. The first question, and please do go into the chat function and answer the questions with a yes or a no. So my first question for you before we start is, do you feel well informed about your future career options? Just a quick yes or no. I'm seeing the first answers coming through. That's great. There's no right or wrong answer here. So just a quick understanding for us where you feel you are at that very point in time. My second question I would like to ask you, hold on, there are some more answers coming through, so I'm just giving it a couple of more seconds. That's great to see. It's a nice variety. It's nice to see that some of you really feel well informed. I think that's a really good starting point. And for those of you who you don't worry, I hope we can support you on that journey. My second question for you is, and I'm going to post it on the chat function, is, are you worried about the impact of COVID-19 and the pandemic will have on your future career options? So are you worried that the pandemic has had an impact or will have an impact on your career options? Okay, thank you very much for participating in those questions. So let me move on to introducing our guest speakers today. I am delighted to welcome our 2 speakers, Katie Kelleher and Holly Moore, to this session. Thank you, Katie and Holly, for joining us and for agreeing to share your story about apprenticeships and your pathway. We're really keen to hear from you. Katie Keller is a crawler crane operator and works at Tideway London, and Holly is an apprentice solicitor and works at ITV. Katie and Holly will both share their stories for the next 8 minutes each, after which we then will open the room for your questions. So over to you. Kelly, let's start with your story. How did you start off? Tell us how did you get to where you are today and everything in between? What is your apprenticeship story? And students at home, please do ask questions whilst Kelly is speaking. As they come along, we will address them at the end after Holly has spoken. Thank you. Katie, over to you.
Yeah, so it took me a long time to sort of figure out what I wanted to do and to get into an apprenticeship. So when I was at school, apprenticeships weren't really a thing, and I didn't know about them or what was out there or what I could do. So I went to university and I did English literature, and then I worked for a number of years quite unhappy in what I was doing. And I ended up doing recruitment for trades and labour. So that was your painters, your bricklayers, plasterers, anyone who works in construction. And I kind of thought, could I work in construction? I didn't have any qualifications, so I couldn't just go straight in. I didn't really know what I'd do, to be honest. So I sent out my CV, and I got a phone call back from a company that I work for, Select Plant Hire, saying they had they call it a lifting technician apprenticeship starting. Would I be interested? So, I mean, in short, it's a crane operating apprenticeship, and I didn't. My first thought was that women don't really operate cranes. To be honest, I didn't think I'd never come into contact with a woman crane operator, so I didn't really think that we did it. But I thought I'd give the apprenticeship a go. So when I did my apprenticeship, I went to college in a place called Bircham Newton, which is in Norfolk, and I learned how to operate crawler cranes, and they're the cranes on tracks. So the lower down ones. I did tower cranes, which are the massive ones you see in cities, working on all the massive buildings around. So you probably see more of them than anything else. I also do slinging signalling. So that's how to attach a load safely to a crane, in order to, which is quite important because you can't just send loads up in the air because you don't want them coming back down again. I did other tickets, sort of dumper tickets. I did traffic marshalling, which is learning how to signal cranes. So my company paid for me to do all these different tickets that otherwise I wouldn't have been able to afford, and I never ever thought I could do. So following college, I was sent out onto construction sites, which is where I work. And I was sent to a Crossrail site, and then I worked for Tideway. So these are like big projects in London that I managed to work on. So it's been a good journey, I guess. I'm kind of trying to keep it short and take you through it all, but I think the important thing is with construction, you don't have to work on a building site if you don't want to. There's loads of different jobs out there. So I do work on a building site, but you can go into project management, you can go into construction management, you can go into architecture, you can do a degree apprenticeship. I did a non-degree apprenticeship, so I come out with an MVQ, and then I forward my MVQ to a level 5 MVQ to do my appointed persons ticket. But if I was to do my time again, you did say, would we start off in an apprenticeship? I would 110% start off doing an apprenticeship, rather than going the route I did. And I would probably, dare I say it, try a degree apprenticeship rather than doing a non-degree apprenticeship if I have my time again, because people pay for you to go to university. I paid for myself to go to university, but a company would have paid for me to go to university, learn a whole host of skills, and I would have come out the end of it with a career, rather than I worked in a phone shop for many years and then I did loads of sales jobs. But I would have went straight into a career which would have put me years ahead of my peers.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Katie, for sharing. And it's quite interesting to hear, you've done a degree, haven't you? And then, quite late years later, you moved into an apprenticeship, which I think is quite an interesting change and pathway, and shows, it's not a either or question. It's, you can actually do both, and there's nothing to lose. So it's really interesting. Before we go into questions, Holly, over to you. You have a very different story to tell, indeed, and let's hear about your journey and your and how apprenticeships have impacted your career, please. Holly, over to you. I think you're on mute, Holly.
Sorry, I knew there would be a technical issue. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has turned up this morning. I think that it's a really, really good sign that you're sort of taking this step already to learn more about your career and your career options, and this can only put you in better stead when you leave school or when you're looking into your options for your career journey. So a little bit about me. So my name's Holly Moore. I'm a 5th year solicitor apprentice at ITV. And like we said, my journey is a little bit different to Katie's, but I think that's one of the beauties of apprenticeships, is that you can really go into any sector that you like. There's apprenticeships in pretty much every single sector, from construction to law. So my solicitor apprenticeship, I wanted to explain a bit about what a solicitor apprenticeship is. because they're still quite unknown, they're still quite new. And I was the first year to take on a solicitor apprenticeship back in 2016. So a solicitor apprenticeship is a 6-year course. You have to have A-levels, you leave college, and then you go straight into an employment setting. So that could either be with a law firm or an in-house company, like I am. So in-house is where you work for a company and their legal team rather than working for a law firm that focuses on all different areas of law. So it's 6 years. The first 4 years is taken up with your law degree. So as discussed, the firm will pay for your entire law degree and all of your qualification tuition fees, which is a huge benefit to apprenticeships. And the last 2 years is taken up with something called the solicitors qualifying exams, which is what you need to actually qualify as a lawyer after you've done your law degree. Like I say, all of this is funded, and during this time you work for the company that is employing you as well. So my typical week is 4 days in the office. When we're in the office, I'm working from home at the moment, and then 1 day study. So it's 20% off the job learning that will equal to, and that will allow me to do my law degree and to work at the same time and gain all of those practical skills that I wouldn't have got had I chosen the traditional university route and gone to university full time. And again, that's another benefit of apprenticeships, in my opinion, is that you get all of this experience, and by the time I qualify, which will be next year now, and it's really flown by, I'll have 6 years solid practical legal experience, and I'm working at a level that is way above my age and my peers, as they are either just finishing their law degree or doing their qualifying exams, but they haven't had much experience at all. Kind of the traditional route will mean that you would do a training contract after university, which will give you 2 years experience, but I'm coming out with 6 and no university debt, which is a huge plus for me. And so that's the solicitor apprenticeship. Feel free to pop some questions in the chat if I haven't been clear enough, or I'm happy to go into more detail if you need. But I wanted to talk a little bit about my route and my experience so far, why I chose this route for myself. So when I was at college, I was really interested in law, wanted to be a lawyer, and I thought that the only way to become a lawyer was to get my A-levels, leave college, go to university, do a law degree, try and get a training contract and do the qualifying exams, which is really difficult. Kind of when you get into that in the real world, you might go to university and do a law degree. That doesn't mean you're going to become a lawyer, because it is really tough to get a training contract. There's a huge amount of students coming out of university trying to get all of these jobs that there just aren't that many of. And that's what I was worried about at the time. And I thought, is there a different way that I can go to put myself in a better position and still have all of those exact same qualifications? So I still wanted my law degree, still wanted my qualifying exams, and to be a fully qualified lawyer. And I think it was fate, really, because I was really lucky that in 2016, the year that I left college, was the first year that solicitor apprenticeships were introduced by the government. So I was really lucky, but then also it's a daunting prospect to go into a job that no one else has done before, and to take part in a scheme that I had nobody to ask. I had no one to sort of lean on, because no one had heard of or done this before. But when I looked into it and I saw, okay, 6 years experience, I can work for a company like ITV and work in all of their legal departments, working on things like the biggest shows that are out at the moment, things like Love Island, I'm a Celebrity, Dancing on Ice, and get really practical legal experience and have my university degree paid for and become qualified. I just couldn't see a better route than that. And it was sort of a no-brainer for me. Once I looked into it, I was like, this is 100% the route for me. And I wanted to take that leap at that time. But something that I did want to touch on is apprenticeships. I will advocate for apprenticeships 100%. And it was definitely the best route for me to take. But I do acknowledge that it's not the right route for everybody. A 6-year commitment straight out of college might not be the route that you want to go, and that's absolutely fine. Some people do want to go to university and do their law degree or do any degree, but they might not be sure what career they want to take yet. They might want a career change. So a 6-year commitment is a big commitment, and you might want to look into other apprenticeships, like paralegal apprenticeships that are only 2 years, just to dip your toe in the water and see, is this for me, is this career for me, and then progress onto either another apprenticeship or go and get your degree. So I think it's just a case of being really aware of your options and what's out there, rather than sort of fixating on university or apprenticeships. Have a look at both and see which works best for you, because I think that's what I did, and I absolutely disregarded university full time when I realised that solicitor apprenticeships were 100% for me. So yeah, just keep that in mind, and think about all of your options, and also what career you want to go into. Is there a better way to get to where you want to be than by going to university or doing an apprenticeship? It's there's so many options out there, so broaden your horizons and see what's out there for you.
Michaela, you're on mute.
So thank you very much, Holly, and for the insights you've given. And I think particularly solicitor apprenticeships, as you say, they're fairly new, and I think there's still a lot of discussion around it. You know, should you go the university route or should you go the apprenticeship route? And I have a couple of questions myself, but I would love to address to both of you. There have been a couple of questions coming in, so let's start with the questions. And please, everybody, if you have questions either for Katie or for Holly, just pop them into the chat. Just let me know if it's a question for both or if it's a question for either Holly or Katie. And I'm very happy to put those questions out. So Katie, quite interesting. There was one question around which university did you go to in order to study English?
I went to the University of East London, so quite a local university to me. But yeah, it's a number of years ago. But that's the one I went to. Yeah.
And can I just add to that? So you studied English, and now you're a crane driver. So at what point did you realise that the sales side of things you've been following for quite a few years were not quite the career you were looking for, but you then decided? I mean, studying English and then becoming a crane driver is quite a change, which is actually nice in its own right, because it shows that you can change careers quite drastically, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what was the trigger point for you to decide an apprenticeship is the way forward and a total shift in career too?
So while I was at university, I was working at a shop called Phones4You at the time, which isn't around anymore. So I was selling mobile phones. So as soon as I finished with that, I fell into sales. And what happens is, unfortunately, in the working world, once you're working in a sector such as sales, that's on your CV, you move to another sales job very easily because that's what you're qualified to do. And I got stuck. I got stuck in a circle of sales. So although I ended up in recruitment, it's still sales. You're selling people rather than objects or advertising space. And I never enjoyed it. I was good at sales because I'm a really good communicator. And I can talk to people, but I was never very money orientated, which is always the key with sales and recruitment. And you've got targets that you have to hit, but I was never that way inclined. And although I often tried to do other things, I wanted to work in other things, I didn't have the experience in other things. So people weren't willing to look at me to take me on for that job. And then this whole apprenticeship thing come up, and somebody was willing to invest in me and willing to train me up and put years of investment and give me a job at the end of it and pay me every week. And it just seemed like a really good idea for me.
Thank you. A similar question for you, Holly, in terms of the university. So there's a question from the audience. So which university did you go to for your law degree? And I think maybe adding, can you choose the university you go to, or does your company where you do the apprenticeship, do they tell you which university you have to partake in? So maybe you can bring a bit of light into that.
Yeah, sure. So I went to City University London, and that was for my law degree. So I finished my law degree last year, and I'm currently studying towards the solicitors qualifying exams, and that's with Barbary. So they're sort of a postgraduate provider. And in terms of choosing your university, you don't get to choose your university. So that's all part of the apprenticeship package. Your employer will sort of form a relationship with a university provider, and that's who you go to. So there's a supportive sort of network from your university and from your employer, because we're all in contact. But yeah, that was something that I did consider, because I didn't get to choose my university. But in terms of grades and things like that, you need to have the grades to be able to go to university to study law in terms of A-levels or equivalent. It's just a case that you're not able to choose where you go. But there are other providers as well. So the main ones are City University, BPP Law School, and University of Law. They're the main providers for the degree apprenticeships. Yeah.
And how competitive is it to be accepted for a degree apprenticeship? So how many applications did you have to write? You know, what was your experience on that front?
Yeah, it's very competitive. I think all degree apprenticeships, regardless of whether it's in law or not, are extremely competitive. Like, for example, my apprenticeship at ITV, they only took on one person, which was me. But in the very beginning, there were 800 applicants for one position. So it's extremely competitive to sort of set yourself apart from the other applicants and prove that you're the best person for this, and this is really the route that you want to take. And in terms of the amount of applications that I made, I applied for absolutely everything that I could find, all of the sort of degree apprenticeships. And I applied for also paralegal apprenticeships, because I thought if I don't get a solicitor apprenticeship, then as a fallback, hopefully I can get a paralegal apprenticeship, and then I'll join the solicitor apprenticeship afterwards. It was just a case of sort of getting in first. But I would say maybe 15 altogether. But there are even more available now. That was just the first year. So there are a lot more.
That's not bad, actually, 15 to then have secured a position. And equally, if you come from a law degree, the market is very, very competitive for law and for contracts, training contracts for people who come from the university route. So exactly. Interesting to hear. And I think it's a very good point you're stressing. So it's not about the grades. If you don't get as good a grade as for university, you can still do apprenticeships. No, it's actually the requirements are the same. Yes. But it's just the inclination whether you're more practically law orientated and you want to get practical experience as well as the theoretical knowledge, or whether you are going down the university route and acquire your theoretical knowledge first and then gain the practical experience. So it's more about the liking, whether you're more, where your strengths are more, and how you best learn, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think as well, it's about stability in your career, because I didn't want that worry of doing my law degree and then coming out and possibly not having a training contract. So I sort of took it upon myself to do the training contract process, but 4 years early. So really, I was getting myself a 6-year training contract rather than a 2-year at the end, and it took away a lot of that stress for me, because then I could just focus on my studies and working, because I knew that I would be qualified if I did my part. But yeah, it's not about getting low grades and going for an apprenticeship. Like that's really not how it works.
And do you know whether, and I think the question that could actually go to both of you. So do you think you can apply for university and for apprenticeships at the same time, so you could keep your options open at the point of application? What do you think?
I'll let Katie go first.
Yeah, I think so. I don't see why not. And like I said, we do degree and non-degree apprenticeships, so it really depends which path you want to take. We do a lot of civil engineering, structural engineering degree apprenticeships, or if you're looking for something a bit more hands-on in construction, you've got electrical apprenticeships, plumbing apprenticeships, crane operating apprenticeships. I think it just really depends which route you want to take, and whether university is for you or it isn't for you, and whether that's the route you want to go. Because I think both are great, because you both ways. Working for a construction company like mine, you come out the end and you've got a career. So it doesn't really matter which way you go. It's just what you prefer and what you actually want to do. Are you more hands-on, or do you not want to step foot on a construction site? Do you want to sit in an office somewhere? Do you want to sit in a big office in the middle of London, or do you want to get your hands dirty? Do you want to be part of the building process, or do you want to plan the building process? And I think it comes down to that.
Thank you. Holly, what do you think? So can you apply for an apprenticeship and degree apprenticeship and a degree, so you keep your options open about the pathway you take?
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of people that have applied to both and made the decision sort of as it came to it, when they had to make a decision, either do I accept my university place or do I accept my apprenticeship? And I mean, pretty much without exception, most people have chosen the apprenticeship route because it's university and more. So I think you definitely can. And if you're not sure yet, look into both, apply for both. You can't go wrong really with just having as many options as possible. I mean, for me, I didn't apply to university, and maybe looking back, that wasn't a great decision on my part, because if I didn't get a few offers of solicitor apprenticeships, like I had the luxury of choosing between people that I wanted to work for. But if I didn't have that, I would have been in a difficult scenario, because I would have left college without anything. So yeah, definitely keep all your options open.
Perfect. I have one last question for you, Holly, and a last one for you, Katie, before we close the session. We've got 2 minutes left, so please, brief and quick answers. So Holly, what A-levels did you do, and are you guaranteed to have a job at ITV after you complete your 6th year, or do you have to actually apply as if you weren't there for, before?
So I did law, psychology and English literature A-levels, and I also did a legal skills course at my college. I was lucky that they provided that. In terms of a job at the end, I'm not guaranteed a job, but on the same wave, I can leave if I want to. I can go wherever I want. So I think I would love to stay at ITV, and I think we would all take that as the best scenario out of this. But it's not written into my contract that I 100% have a job.
Perfect, thank you. And Katie, my last question for you before we go down is your apprenticeship. What is the qualification level you actually need in order to apply for a crane driver or for construction industry non-degree apprenticeship? Because we've talked a lot about degree apprenticeships. What about the skill set and the degrees and the skills you need to bring for that?
Yeah, so I although I come to my apprenticeship a lot later, it's not so much about qualifications. So when I did my apprenticeship, they work together to get you to a standard level of English, maths, and you go through tests while you're at college in order to make sure you're at that required level. But nobody asked me about my qualifications, and what I'd done before or that I'd been to university didn't matter in doing this. It was more about the person. So during the testing process, when I went for my interview, I went through psychometric testing. I also did group testing. So it was a lot of seeing how you react to other people. And a lot of the psychometric testing obviously is a bit testing my maths and things like that, but which I hadn't done for a long time. But it's more about the person and less about what qualifications you have. It's more about willing.
Perfect. Thank you both of you for this great insight into your apprenticeship journey and what apprenticeships are required for in order to take that pathway, and whether you feel one option or the other is better or not. So thank you very much for those insights. I thought, and I hope we all agree, this was a really insightful session. Thank you very much for participating today, and have a lovely day. Thank you, Holly. Thank you, Katie. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.